Hello there, my friend, and welcome. You made it through another day, and now, in this quiet corner of the world, I'm so glad you're here, just you. A soft glow in the dark, and the gentle hum of history drifting closer with every breath. If you're hearing the faint music behind my voice, that's because each night, we create these calm, immersive journeys through time, not just to teach, but to help you sleep better deeper with something old and beautiful in your mind as you drift off. And if these stories bring you even a little peace, we'd be truly grateful if you supported us by subscribing. That's what keeps this candlelit corner alive, night after night. Now, before we begin, I wonder, where in the world are you listening from? Is it already late where you are, or are you just winding down after a long afternoon? Feel free to share it with us in the comments. I read each one. And it always warms me to know that someone across the world is lying quietly now, just like you, listening to the same whisper of the past. So, if you're settled in, if your blanket is pulled just a little tighter, and your breath has begun to slow, then let's begin. Tonight, we're returning to a time before electric light, before gas heat, before insulation and modern roofs. We're going back to a winter so deep, so long, that people would remember it in stories for generations. A winter not measured in snowdrifts or frozen rivers, but in silence, in hunger, in breath hanging still in the air, in waiting for spring, and not knowing if it would come. You're in a small village in Europe, sometime in the 14th century. The harvest was poor this year. The livestock are thin. The sky has turned gray and low, and the cold has begun to bite. You wake early not from a rooster, but from the stiffness in your back and the sharp ache in your toes. The straw beneath you is half frozen. Your breath curls in front of you. The fire died hours ago, and your family is still asleep, huddled close, sharing what little warmth that the night didn't steal. You sit up. You don't speak. No one does. This early, the cottage creaks softly. A faint wind whistles through a crack in the timber wall. Somewhere outside, the snow shifts against the door. You pull on your cloak, rough wool, patch 3 times, and step outside into the gray dawn. And from there, the day begins. You step outside, and at first, all you hear is the soft crunch beneath your feet. The snow isn't fresh, it fell 2 nights ago, but the top has hardened slightly, crisp like a thin shell of ice that breaks just as your heel presses through. The wind doesn't howl today. It's the gentler kind, steady and cold, winding its way around your ankles, slipping up your sleeves, whispering along the edges of the cottage door as it swings closed behind you. Your breath clouds in the air, not in great puffs, but in slow spirals. You watch it for a moment. It drifts upward, then disappears, just like that. You tighten the cloak around your shoulders, pulling the hood forward, and begin the walk toward the woodpile. There isn't much left. A few broken branches, some damp logs, and a crooked pile of twigs you gathered from the hedgerow 3 days ago. The rest has been burned already, weeks ago, when the first frost came early and caught the village off guard. Now each piece of wood is precious. You pick carefully, fingers already stiff from the cold, brushing snow from a thin birch log that still smells faintly sweet even in winter. You tuck it under your arm, then another, and another, until your arms are full. It's not much, it never is, but it will have to be enough to get through this morning. As you make your way back, you glance toward the path that leads to the well. A single set of footprints crosses it, already softened at the edges, likely from the neighbor's boy, fetching water before sunrise. Brave of him, or desperate? You'll have to go soon. 2. The fire must come first. You reach the door and nudge it open with your foot, careful not to drop the logs. The hinges creak softly, the warmth of the room rushing to greet you, not because it's warm inside, but because it's still warmer than outside. Your family hasn't stirred yet. Your mother sleeps in the corner under a thick woven blanket, only the top of her brow visible. Your younger sister lies curled tightly beside the hearth, her small hands tucked beneath her chin. The embers glow faintly beneath the ash, like little eyes peeking up from the dark, waiting to see what you'll do next. You kneel slowly, placing the wood in the fire cradle, brushing back what remains of the old coals. A breath, then another. You strike the flint once, twice, 3 times, A spark, then flame. It catches on the edge of a dried straw twist, curls up into the bark, licks the side of the birch. The fire doesn't roar. It grows in a hush, like someone softly clearing their throat in a cold chapel. You watch it for a while, hands open toward the warmth, fingers beginning to feel again. A crackle, a snap. The smell of wood smoke rises, sharp and comforting at once, curling into the air like incense. Someone behind you stirs. The fire wakes them too, your sister murmurs, rubbing her eyes, then curls closer to the warmth. You reach over and pull the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She doesn't open her eyes, just exhales slowly, her face softening. You smile, just faintly, and turn back to the fire. The snow outside has brightened a little, the gray sky softening at the edges. It isn't sunlight, not really, but it's something. You know what comes next. Water from the well. The bucket is already near the door. You take it, wrapping a strip of wool around the handle so it won't bite into your skin. Outside again, the air sharper this time, the wind impatient now, tugging at your hood. The path is uneven, worn by many steps, edged by low hedges frosted white. Your boots sink a little with each stride. The well is near the chapel, its stones mossy and cold, rimmed with a thin crust of ice where snowmelt touched and froze again. You drop the pail slowly. It lands with a dull splash. You wait, listen to the echoes, then draw it back up. The rope creaks with effort. Your arms pull steadily. It's not heavy, but your muscles are tired already, worn thin from the same motion every morning. The water inside is clear, cold, clean. You look into it for a moment. Your reflection blurs in the ripple. You're thinner than you were last year. Everyone is. The winters have stretched longer these past seasons, and the grain stores run out sooner each time. You pour a little water into your hand and sip. It's sharp against your teeth. You close your eyes, let it linger, then begin the walk back. The door groans again as you return. The fire has grown brighter, and your sister now sits beside it, legs tucked under her, hands outstretched. She looks up and smiles. Her lips are chapped, but her eyes are clear. You nod, say nothing. Just set the bucket down and begin to slice a piece of hard bread from the loaf on the shelf. It cracks slightly, dry from the cold. You pour a little water into the pot, set it near the fire, and wait for it to warm. Soon. It will be time to go check the barn to see if the goat has made it through another night. But for now, for this one quiet moment, there is warmth, there is fire, there is breath that does not freeze, and that is enough. You pull your cloak tighter as you open the door once more, the warmth of the cottage clinging to your back for a moment before it's chased away by the wind. The cold hits differently now, not as a sudden jolt, but as something constant, expected, like the way silence returns to a room after everyone has left. The snow crunches beneath your boots again, more brittle than before. The sky hasn't changed, still that same dull white, the kind that presses down instead of floating above. You move past the well, past the row of stones marking the edge of the herb garden, now buried under frost, toward the barn that leans slightly to one side, as if bowing under the weight of too many winters. The wood of the door is swollen from moisture, and it groans as you pull it open. Inside, the air is different, warmer by a breath, tinged with the scent of hay, old wood, and the faint musk of animal breath. You pause in the doorway, not out of hesitation, but because it is quiet here, still, sacred in its own way. The goat lifts her head from the straw, eyes dull but alive, her breath rising in pale clouds as she chews slowly. You step inside, careful not to let the door slam, and kneel beside her, brushing your hand along her side to check for warmth. Her coat is coarse, thick with frost along the edges, but she's breathing steady. You exhale softly and whisper something without words, just sound. Something your mother used to hum when the winters were worse and the animals fewer. The hay is low, not dangerously low, but lower than you'd like for early winter. You reach for the small pitchfork leaning against the beam and toss a few dry bundles into her stall. The goat sniffs them once, then returns to chewing. You check the water bucket. A skin of ice has already formed along the surface. You crack it gently with your knuckles and scoop out the shards, pouring a little fresh water from the jug you brought earlier. The sound is crisp, almost musical. It echoes softly in the wooden space like wind chimes made of bone. There's no rush. You move slowly, your hands guided more by habit than thought. You sweep the floor a bit with the stiff broom, rearrange the tools along the pegboard. You pick up a dropped horseshoe, half buried in straw, and tuck it back onto the shelf. The rhythm of it all is grounding, quiet. You let your breath match the pace of your work, and for a while, time doesn't feel like it's passing at all. But then your fingers begin to ache again, not from injury, from the kind of cold that seeps in quietly, wraps itself around the joints, and settles there. You know it's time to go back. You brush your hand once more down the goat's side. She shifts slightly, then settles again. You pull the door closed behind you, and as you turn, the wind greets you head on, lifting your hood and cutting across your cheeks like it has something to prove. You squint against the brightness of the snow, now scattered with flurries that hadn't been there when you came out. Tiny specks that dance in the air. Not enough to obscure the view, but enough to suggest what's coming. You look out across the fields. The trees beyond the village lean like dark fingers against the pale sky. Smoke rises from a few other rooftops, now thin, hesitant, curling upward in uncertain columns. You return to the cottage with the feeling that the day has shifted somehow. Not in any obvious way, but in the way birds sometimes stop singing a few minutes before a storm. You stamp the snow from your boots and step inside. The fire still burns, and your sister has begun to stir the pot with a wooden spoon, her movements slow and sleepy. Your mother has risen now, sitting near the back wall, wrapping a scarf around her shoulders and rubbing her knees with thin, reddened hands. You nod to her. She nods back. No one says anything. Words, this early, are a luxury. You sit beside the fire again, letting the heat soak slowly into your knees, into your fingers. You hold your hands out, turning them carefully, watching the skin color shift from pale to pink. The smell of porridge rising from the pot is faint, bland, but warm. Your stomach growls, and your sister hears it, her lips twitching in the smallest of smiles. Outside, the snow has begun to fall again. Not a flurry now, a steady curtain of white. You watch it gather along the window ledge, catching against the corners of the old glass. You know what comes next: the rest of the chores, the long hours of daylight that never quite feel bright, the meals that grow smaller with each passing week. But for now, there is warmth in the room, a fire, a roof, a bowl of food. You have seen worse winters. You may yet see worse still, but you are here, and for a little while longer. That is enough. The porridge is thin today. You expected that. A few oats stirred into water, with a pinch of salt scraped from the bottom of a worn ceramic jar. Your sister hands you a bowl, the wooden edges warm from the fire. You hold it between your palms for a moment before you eat, letting the heat sink in, softening the ache in your knuckles. The first spoonful tastes of smoke, not burnt, just fire touched. Everything does. In winter, the second is better. Your mother takes her time eating. She stares into the flames as she chews, her jaw moving slowly, eyes unfocused. You don't speak. No one does. Not because there's nothing to say, but because the words don't make the food any thicker, or the wind outside any less sharp. When the bowls are emptied, your sister begins to wash them quietly, using snow melted into the iron pot beside the hearth. The cloth she scrubs with is stiff from repeated use, worn thin in the middle. You help her dry. There's a rhythm to it, hands passing, cloth folding, steam rising faintly into the cold air that still clings to the corners of the room. Your mother stretches her legs slowly, rising with effort, and steps toward the doorway to peek outside. She doesn't open it, just listens for a while, then turns back, pulling her shawl tighter. You know what she's thinking? You're all thinking it. The grain jar is half empty. The root cellar still holds a few turnips, a sack of onions, and one cabbage going soft at the edges. But that's not the concern. Not yet. It's the flour. It's always the flour. If snow blocks the road to the next village for more than a week, the merchant won't come. And if he doesn't come, then there's no more grain to stretch into bread. You've learned how to make do. Everyone has. Soup from stale crusts, tea from dried bark. But there's only so far ingenuity can take a family in the heart of winter. You hear the creak of leather as your mother retrieves the coin pouch from its hiding place near the stove. She weighs it gently in her palm. It makes no sound. A quiet pouch is not a good sign. She places it back, then says, barely above a whisper, "Well, manage?" You nod once. Not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. It's not a question, it's a vow, a soft one, wrapped in worry. You offer to go check on the neighbors. The old man across the way has been coughing for 3 days now. No one's seen him outside since the snow began. Your mother doesn't answer right away, then finally nods. She hands you a small bundle, a heel of bread wrapped in cloth, and a strip of salted fat. No longer than your thumb, just in case, she says. You take it, tuck it into your belt pouch, pull your hood up, and step back into the white. The snow is deeper now. It pulls at your boots, soft and heavy, muffling your steps as you cross the narrow path between cottages. Smoke rises thinly from only one of the chimneys nearby. The rest stands silent, like stone markers in a field of white. The door to the old man's hut is shut, snow pressed up against the base. You knock, then listen. Nothing. You knock again. Louder. A cough, faint and wet. Answers from within. You open the latch slowly and step inside. The air hits you first sour, stale, close. The fire is out. The shutters are drawn. The man lies curled on a pile of rags, his breath shallow, his eyes barely open. He blinks at you once, not quite surprised, not quite grateful. You kneel beside him, unwrap the bundle, and press the bread into his hand. He grips it loosely, then nods, the motion trembling down his shoulder. You find a bit of wood stacked near the hearth barely enough, and begin rebuilding the fire, your fingers moving with steady habit. The flint is old, but it sparks. The flame rises. You watch until it catches fully, then stand to leave. As you close the door behind you, the wind catches the corner of your cloak and lifts it briefly, scattering a bit of snow into your face. It's colder than before, sharper, the kind of cold that bites at the corners of your eyes. You pull the hood down tighter and begin walking home, one foot in front of the other, the path behind you already vanishing beneath fresh snow. Back at the cottage, your sister sits by the window, tracing shapes on the fog glass. Your mother stirs something in the pot again. Though you know there's little left to stir, you step inside and close the door softly. No one asks what you saw. They already know. You sit beside the fire, close your eyes for a moment, and let your breath slow. Outside, the snow keeps falling, and still. You endure. The next morning arrives not with light, but with a dim, bluish haze pressing against the shutters. A sky so heavy with snow, it seems to muffle time itself. You wake to the familiar ache in your limbs and the sharp sting of frost on your cheeks. Even beneath the patchwork wool blanket wrapped tightly around your shoulders, the fire in the hearth has gone out, leaving only the scent of ash and the faint glow of a buried ember. Your fingers reach toward it instinctively, brushing through the cold soot to find any heat that still remains. There is none. You must start again. Your mother is already up, crouched beside the hearth, coaxing new flame from dry twigs and bark, her breath rising in small clouds. She doesn't speak, and neither do you. There's no need. You move slowly, pulling on your outer tunic, hands stiff inside their sleeves, and begin preparing for the task ahead. Outside, the world has been buried again. Fresh snow covers the paths, the fences, the woodpile. You feel it in your bones, the quiet dread of another long day spent chasing warmth that will not last. The axe is cold in your hand, its wooden handle slick with frozen mist. You carry it across the yard toward the stump behind the cottage, where the last of the larger logs are stacked like sleeping beasts, crusted in white. You choose one and set it upright, your hands already aching from the chill. Each swing echoes through the still air, thudding into the wood with a dull, reluctant sound. The log splits unevenly. You don't stop. You split another, then another, pausing only when the blade bounces free and lands at your feet, ringing softly against the frozen ground. Your breath comes in visible bursts, curls around your face, and drifts upward like smoke. By midday, the snow has begun again, soft flakes drifting down in silence. You gather the split logs into a sack, sling it over your shoulder, and make your way toward the forest edge for kindling. The trees here are thin and crooked, limbs bare, crusted with frost like sugared branches on a dead cake. Beneath one, you kneel, fingers working quickly to collect the smaller sticks, careful not to crack them too loudly. The forest is quiet today. Not peaceful, just waiting. You listen, and hear only the soft patter of snow against your cloak and the faint rustle of something moving through the trees, far off. Perhaps a deer, or perhaps just the wind. You return home with your load, boots soaked, legs numb, face red from the cold. Your sister opens the door before you reach it. She takes one look at you, then turns back toward the hearth. The fire is stronger now, flickering against the blackened stones. You kneel before it, stretching your hands toward the warmth, and for a moment, you forget everything else, the ache in your shoulders, the wet socks, the gnawing hunger. The fire crackles, and it is enough. Your mother places a pot over the flames, filled with water, dried herbs, and the last scrap of meat from the smokehouse. It's thin, more broth than stew, but it smells good, rich, earthy, comforting. You sit with your back against the wall, watching the steam rise. Your sister hums softly, almost without realizing it, and the sound threads its way through the room like something warm. Outside, the wind begins to pick up. You hear it in the chimney, a hollow moan that grows and falls like breath. You know what it means? A storm is coming, the kind that coats the windows in ice and turns footsteps to shadows in the snow. Your mother nods once, then rises to check the shutters. You help her fasten the slats, hammering them closed with a wedge of wood and an iron nail, sealing out what cold you can. The room darkens. The firelight dances now across your faces, throws your shadows against the walls like puppets. The stew is served, and you eat in silence again. But not the hard silence of hunger. This is quieter, gentler, the kind of silence that says, "We have made it through another day." You glance toward the small alcove where you keep the cloth-wrapped herbs, the beeswax candles, the carefully rationed salt. So little left. But still, you have enough for now. After supper, you press your feet close to the hearthstones and wrap yourself in your cloak. The room smells of smoke and thyme, wool and soot. Your sister lays her head on your shoulder. Already half asleep, your mother sits nearby, repairing a tear in the hem of a tunic with small, precise stitches. The needle glints each time it catches the firelight. Time stretches thin here, like thread between fingers. The wind howls again outside. You close your eyes and listen to the fire, steady and soft. As the storm gathers beyond the walls, you think about the wood you chopped today. It will last 2 nights, maybe 3. Then you'll begin again. That's the way of it. Each day folded into the next, like snow layering upon snow. Quiet and relentless, and still, you endure. Evening thickens like dye in still water. The fading gray outside the shuttered windows deepening into blue, then purple, then the ink black of true night. Inside your cottage, the fire glows steadily, not roaring, but pulsing low with a reddish warmth that spreads out across the floor in flickers and slow shadows. The kind of fire that speaks softly rather than shouts, one that must be watched, tended, never trusted too long on its own. You rise slowly from the woven mat of straw and cloth where you sat beside your sister, your body creaking slightly from the day's labor. Your hand reaches toward the iron hook by the wall where a small beeswax candle waits. With a twist of old linen, you light it from the hearth's edge, shielding the fragile flame as it catches and dances upright. You walk carefully now, candle in hand, through the cottage's narrow interior, its walls dark with soot and centuries of smoke. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth, cool even near the hearth, and faintly marked with the shapes of many footsteps. Yours, your family's, others before. You pass the tall wooden cupboard with its latches bound in iron, where dried roots and bunches of herbs hang upside down, their shadows long and still. A pot of rendered tallow sits in a corner, covered in a linen square held down by a stone. The room smells faintly of it fat, smoke, sage, and wool. The candlelight makes the ceiling seem lower, the corners deeper, the night beyond the door even colder than it was. You feel it like a truth, not in your skin, but in your ribs. that this season is something older than you, something with memory and hunger. At the far end of the room, beside the sleeping bench, you kneel to open a small wooden chest. Inside are the winter treasures, wool leggings patched at the knees, a heavier cloak trimmed in squirrel fur, and 2 pairs of gloves so stiff with old sweat and frost they barely bend. Beneath these lies a pouch of salt wrapped in hide, and next to it, a bundle of kindling twine. You count these things by touch, not greedily, but carefully. The way a ship's captain might count sails on the horizon. They are not many, but they are yours, behind you. Your mother has begun to sing, very quietly, her voice little more than a hum. It is not a song with words, but you recognize its shape, the rise and fall, the pauses where breath holds for just a moment too long. You've heard it since you were a child, never quite the same twice, but always arriving near the heart of winter, a song for sitting still, for remembering who you are. You return to the fire, setting the candle down into a clay dish near the hearth, its flame casting overlapping rings of gold that dance across the stonework. The warmth is deeper here now, not just from the flames, but from the stillness, the quiet presence of those around you. Your sister asleep with one hand still curled around a wool scrap. Your mother sewing by touch alone, eyes half-lidded. The dog curled by the door, his breath slow and soft. You draw your cloak tighter and sit again, folding your legs beneath you, not for comfort, but for calm. You think about the town to the south. It must be snowed in now. The market square buried beneath white drifts, the merchant carts frozen stiff in their stalls. You wonder whether the baker has kept his oven going, whether the church bells still ring on Sundays. Even through the snow, you haven't been there in weeks. Travel is too slow, too risky, but you picture it anyway. The smell of rising dough, the clatter of wooden wheels over stones, the red of apples in crates, the blue of a merchant's scarf. Outside, the storm is rising again. You can hear it in the wind as it rakes across the roof, hissing between the thatch and shaking the shutters in their frames. The trees groan and sway under the weight of snow. You wonder, just for a moment, how many winters your cottage has endured, how many storms have blown across these fields while someone sat here, by this same hearth, listening to the wind. You reach for the fire poker and shift a log deeper into the coals, watching as sparks leap upward like startled birds. The candle flickers too, but does not go out. You feel your eyes grow heavy, not from sleep, not yet, but from stillness. That deep heaviness that comes only after a long day of work and silence, and firelight, and the cold held briefly at bay. You look down at your hands, palms red, knuckles raw, fingers chapped and cracked at the edges. They are hands that know the cold, that remember labor. You don't speak. There is no need. The quiet speaks for you now, and the winter listens. Morning arrives not with brightness, but with a pale, sluggish gray that presses against the window, shudders like a weary ghost. You open your eyes slowly, the chill already awake in the room. The fire has long since burned low. Only a few fading embers pulse faintly beneath a skin of ash. You do not rush to move. The straw under you is still warm from your body, and the wool blanket rough, and scratchy as it is, forms a small barrier between you and the wider cold. Outside, the wind is quiet now, but the air holds that peculiar stillness that follows a deep night of snowfall. You can feel it even without seeing. When you finally rise, the breath you exhale becomes a pale mist in the dim air. Your fingers are stiff, your toes nearly numb. You rub your hands together and shuffle toward the hearth, squatting beside it and lifting the iron poker to stir the ashes. A few sparks stir to life, and with careful hands, you stack 2 twigs, then a pine log, feeding it gently, slowly, the way one coaxes a sleeping child awake. The fire responds grudgingly, its flame crawling up through the dry wood like a memory returning. You wrap yourself in your cloak and step outside, the door creaking against the weight of the snowdrift pressed against it. The world has vanished beneath white, the paths, the fields, the low stone wall that divides your land from the next all gone, smooth beneath a thick, untouched sheet. The trees bend under its weight, their limbs burdened and beautiful. The sky is low and pale, and sound feels muffled, like the world has pulled a woolen hood over its ears. You breathe in, the cold strikes sharply at your nostrils, and the air tastes clean, sharp, like iron and pine, somewhere. A raven calls once sharp, dry, distant, the only thing that moves. You begin the morning's work, breaking a narrow trail through the snow toward the animal shelter. Each step sinks deep, the snow swallowing your legs up to the knees. You grip the wooden bucket tightly, its iron handle biting into your palm. At the door of the shelter, you pause. The goats are huddled together, their bodies steaming slightly in the cold. One bleats at your approach, not with joy but with hunger. You lay out what hay you can spare, rubbing frost from their water trough, your breath fogging the surface as you check for ice. It's already begun to crust the top. The chickens cluck sleepily in their coop. You gather the few eggs they've managed to lay, their shells faintly warm from the straw, and you tuck them carefully into your satchel. As you do, you hear the distant crunch of footsteps in snow. You freeze. Turning your head just slightly, it is not danger, just a neighbor, old Merrick, trudging past with his own bucket, his cloak too thin for this weather, his beard stiff with frost. He raises a hand in silent greeting, and you return it, wordlessly, both of you knowing there is nothing to say this early. Back inside, the cottage is warming again. Your mother is up, crouched near the pot as she adds water and a pinch of barley to the last of the root vegetables. The smell is faint, earthy, thin, but it is food. Your sister unwraps a crust of yesterday's bread and offers a piece to the dog, who noses it once and then curls again beside the fire. You set the eggs on the table and sit, drawing your feet beneath you, listening to the pot bubble. Later, you carry the ashes from the hearth in a metal pan, scattering them just outside the door. Ash wards off the ice, gives traction where there is only slip. The task is small, repetitive, necessary, like so many things in this season. You return again to the fire, holding your hands close now, letting the heat soak slowly into your skin. The wind outside has picked up again, a slow moan that wraps around the house and slips under the eaves like a whisper. You can hear the creak of the shutters. You close your eyes, resting your head against the wall behind you. This is winter, not the momentary chill of a December morning, nor the romance of snow through a window, but the true weight of it, the patience it requires, the quiet it demands, the way it strips life to its bones and shows you what remains. And somehow, here in the midst of that stillness, with smoke curling toward the rafters and frost crawling along the edge of the windowsill, you feel the smallest flicker of something else. Not joy, not yet, but steadiness, a kind of soft endurance, as if the snow has not buried you, but blanketed you, as if this old house, for all its cracks and shadows, still remembers how to hold you in the cold. You exhale again, and for just a moment, the breath lingers in front of you like a ghost, then fades. The hours slip by as the fire grows stronger and the chill outside deepens. Light spills faintly through the small window, but it carries no warmth. The sky has thickened into a blanket of dull gray, and you know more snow is coming. Your hands are red and cracked from yesterday's work, and your back still aches from the wood you hauled in, but you rise again, quietly, because there is always more to be done, and winter does not pause for sore muscles. Your mother ladles out a thin stew barely more than broth and roots, and you cradle the wooden bowl between your hands like it is something precious. The warmth travels slowly through your palms, and you inhale deeply. The scent is humble, but it soothes you. You eat slowly, feeling the grainy texture of boiled barley against your tongue, the way it sticks to your teeth, the subtle sweetness of parsnip. Your sister sits beside you, legs curled under her cloak, eyes downcast. No one speaks much in winter. There's a kind of reverence that settles into everything. Words feel too loud for days like this. After eating, you fetch more firewood from the stack outside. The logs are damp at the edges, and you brush off clumps of snow with your sleeve. Each piece is heavier than it seems, its cold weight numbing your fingertips as you carry it inside. You crouch again at the hearth, arranging the new wood beside the flame, listening to the pop and hiss as it catches. The smoke coils upward, finding the cracks between the stones in the chimney, and the light shifts against the walls. Shadows dance, tall and soft, like memories moving just out of reach. You sit near the fire for a while, arms around your knees, eyes half closed. The heat works slowly into your skin, and your breath evens out. It is easy to doze here, not sleep fully, but drift. You watch the orange flicker, the way the flame curls around the wood, and you remember other winters. The year the frost killed the hens, the time your uncle fell through the ice, the strange silence of snow falling at night. When everything else is still, later, when the light begins to fade again. You walk down the narrow path to the village well, the snow deeper now, the wind cutting sharper. You carry a wooden pail, its handle wrapped in old cloth to keep from freezing your fingers. The village is hushed, smoke rises from a few chimneys, and you see tracks in the snow-goat hooves, someone's boots, the light pads of a dog. You draw the water slowly, watching the bucket descend into the dark, hearing the creak of the rope and the splash far below. When it returns, full and glistening, you lift it carefully and begin the long walk home. By the time you return, dusk is pressing in, painting everything in blue and silver. You light a tallow candle, its flame small and steady, and set it near the window. Outside, snow begins again, soft as flour, swirling in small spirals before settling on the sill. You watch it for a moment, then move to help your mother prepare what little food remains. You peel onions by the light of the fire, the sharp smell stinging your eyes, your fingers moving slowly, carefully. There's no room for waste now. As the night settles fully, the wind returns, it rattles the shutters and hums through the chinks in the wall. You and your family huddle close to the hearth, cloaks pulled tight, the dog curled against your legs. Your father tells a story, not one you haven't heard before, but the rhythm of his voice is comforting. The tale is old, older than the house, older perhaps than the village. A hunter lost in the snow, a fox who speaks, a tree that sings. You listen without needing to believe it. That isn't the point. When the story ends, the silence is warm and deep. You watch the candle flicker. You listen to the wood crackle. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and feel the breath of the fire against your cheek. This is how the cold is endured, not with defiance, but with small rituals, with quiet hands, with fire and stories and the company of those who stay near. There is a kind of grace in this survival, a beauty not loud or grand, but persistent, like the steady glow of coals that refuse to die, like the whisper of snow that falls again, and again, and again. And as the night deepens, as the fire folds itself into shadow and the wind wraps round the cottage like a shroud, you realize you are not afraid of the winter tonight, not because it has grown kinder, but because you have grown strong enough to greet it. The bell rings once in the distance, a dull echo across the frozen fields, and you know it is nearing vespers. The chapel stands at the edge of the village, its stones dark with age, roof glazed with snow. You pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, the fabric stiff with frost, and begin your walk along the familiar path. Your breath leaves your mouth in slow white clouds, each step crunching beneath worn leather boots. The cold is no longer sharp. It is a weight now, steady, constant, like a second skin. You pass the old wooden fence where the crows perch silently. Their feathers are puffed against the wind, black eyes watching you without blinking. The sky above is bruised with shadow, the last light of day retreating behind thick clouds. Your fingers ache, but you press them into your cloak, not for warmth, but out of habit, the kind of instinct winter carves into you. The chapel door is swollen from the damp, and it groans softly as you push it open. Inside, the air is barely warmer, but it holds a quiet that feels older than the stone. Candles flicker along the altar, their flames dancing in little circles of light. You sit near the back on a wooden bench worn smooth by decades of prayer. You do not speak, no one does, but there is comfort in the presence of others. Heads bowed, shoulders hunched, hands clasped not in fear, but in endurance. The priest's voice rises slowly, not loud, not forceful, just enough to reach you. The words are Latin. You do not understand them all, but the rhythm is enough. Repetition is comfort. The syllables roll like a chant, binding together the bones of the building and the beating of each heart inside it. The flame beside you flickers again, and for a moment you see your own shadow stretching long against the wall. You almost don't recognize it, thin, still, small. When the service ends, no one lingers. Silence gives way to motion, the scrape of wood, the soft rustle of wool. The chapel door opens again, and the cold returns like an old friend. You step back into the wind and feel it immediately on your cheeks, in your throat, across your teeth. It does not hurt. It simply is like hunger, like memory. On the walk home, you pass the graveyard. The stones jut from the earth like crooked teeth, some covered in snow, others half buried in frozen moss. You do not stop, but your eyes rest on a name you recognize. Someone who died last winter. A child. You remember her laugh. She once gave you a wildflower in spring. You had forgotten until just now. You keep walking, past the baker's hut, shuttered tight, past the mill, still and silent, past the well, where the wind hums low through the wooden slats. The village sleeps early in winter, lamps are dim, doors are shut, but inside, you know, each fire is burning slow and low, each family tucked close beneath wool and straw and silence. Back at the cottage, your mother is stirring something over the fire, a broth, maybe, or boiled turnip. You do not ask. You sit near the hearth again, letting the warmth reach you inch by inch. The dog lifts his head briefly, then settles again. The firewood hisses. Your sister hums a tune under her breath, so soft it feels like it belongs to the room more than to her. Your father carves a bit of wood in the corner. It will become something useful, or something decorative, or both. It doesn't matter. It is the carving that keeps the night steady. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. Not for anything specific, just for the shape of the room. The rhythm of life inside walls that groan with the weight of the wind, the scent of smoke and boiled root and old wool, the taste of ash in the air, faint but familiar, the feel of your own fingers warming slowly, pain giving way to a dull throb. This is not comfort, not as the rich would know it, but it is enough. It is what you have, and somehow, it holds you, like the rhythm of prayer you do not understand, like the snow that keeps falling even when no one watches, like the wind that never forgets your name, tonight. You will sleep with your cloak still wrapped around you, straw beneath your back, and the faint whisper of stories drifting from the hearth, stories half remembered, stories older than the roof. And somewhere, just before sleep takes you, you will feel the chapel stone beneath your knees again, the cold pressing through, and the warmth of a single flame dancing before your eyes. Outside, the night has settled into itself, thick and complete, like wool pulled over the eyes of the world. The wind moans gently beneath the eaves, slipping through the cracks in the timber like an old song that no one remembers how to sing. And above you, somewhere hidden in the dark rafters, a bird shifts, soft feathers rustling against dry beams. You sit awake for a little while, not because you must, but because there is something comforting about holding watch, even in silence, especially in silence. The fire is low now, its glow barely touching the stones of the hearth, casting long shadows that rise and fall across the rough planked walls. One of them moves with you, slowly, swaying with the rhythm of your breath. You wrap the old cloak tighter, feeling its edges worn smooth from years of hands like yours. And you listen. The room is quiet, but not empty. A soft snore from your father, the creak of your sister turning in her sleep, the faint crackle of the fire deciding whether to live or die before dawn. These sounds are part of the fabric of night. They are not interruptions. They are the pulse of a life being lived slowly. One breath, one night, at a time. You tilt your head back, eyes tracing the lines where roof meets beam, and beyond them. Your mind stretches upward, imagining the black sky above, stars hidden behind cloud and wind. You wonder if someone far away sees the same night, if another cottage, far across the forest or over the hill, holds a child awake like you, thinking the same quiet thoughts. It is a strange comfort, this invisible companionship, a kinship born of distance, of cold, of shared quiet. The fire pops once, sharp and sudden, and you blink. The dog stirs at your feet but does not rise. You lean forward, toss a small stick into the embers, and the flames welcome it with a slow sigh. The light returns a little stronger, brushing over your hands, your knees, the folds of wool around your legs. You hold your palms to it, and for a moment you feel almost brave, like the keeper of something sacred, even if only a flickering flame on a winter night. Somewhere in the dark outside, an owl calls, one long note, then silence, then another. The rhythm is slow, patient, like a lullaby meant for no one. You do not answer, but you hear it. You let it settle deep into your chest, in your mind. You follow the owl's path over the snow-covered roofs, past the barn with its warm hay and silent cattle, over the frozen pond that glimmers faintly under moonlight you cannot see, through the sleeping village where every door is shut and every window glows faintly with what remains of the day. You wonder how the owl sees the world from up there, if it notices how small everything is, how still. Your mother shifts under her blanket, murmuring something, a dream half-formed. You do not speak. You simply watch her breathe. The lines of her face are softened in the low light, her brow smooth for once. You remember her hands, rough, strong, always moving, plaiting straw, stirring pots, holding yours. She is a quiet woman, but her quiet is not empty. It is full of years and choices and the weight of love too deep for words. You are grateful she sleeps. You lie down eventually, the fire now aglow barely enough to see by. The straw mattress crackles faintly as you settle in beside your siblings. The air is cold, but your body is warm beneath the layers of wool and old cloth. Your face rests close to your brother's back. He shifts once, then stills, and you let yourself sink into the warmth he holds like a small furnace wrapped in sleep. Your hands curl beneath your chin. Your eyelids begin to grow heavy, but your mind lingers. You think of the chapel, of the wind, of the owl's call, of the snow beginning to drift across the doorway outside, and of how tomorrow will be much the same, cold, quiet, slow, but survivable. And in that thought, strangely, you find peace. You do not remember falling asleep, only that at some point, the fire is gone, and the wind still sings, and the world continues to turn, slowly, steadily, wrapped in snow, while you, and your whole little life, rest gently beneath the rafters. By morning, the world outside has transformed. Snow lies thick on the thatched rooftops and across the crooked fences that frame the edges of the village, softening every angle, muting every sound. The cold is deeper now, not sharp but weighty, like a heavy cloak thrown over the shoulders of the land. You rise slowly, your breath clouding the air before you, and rub your hands together until the blood stirs in your fingers. The fire is out, only ashes now, and your toes flinch as they meet the chill of the floor. But there is no time to linger. Today, there is work to be done beyond the cottage walls, and the road that runs through the trees must be walked, no matter what weather greets it. The sky is gray and unmoving as you step outside. Snowflakes swirl gently, falling without urgency, as though they have all the time in the world. The wind is calmer, but it carries the ghost of last night's chill, brushing your cheeks with a sting that wakes the senses more surely than any word or bell. The village is still. Only thin trails of smoke rise from a few chimneys, winding upward into the heavy sky like silent prayers. You pull your cloak tighter, step carefully onto the path, and begin to walk. Your boots crunch into the snow with each step, leaving a trail behind you that is soon dusted over again. Trees line the road like ancient guardians, their branches bare and black against the pale sky, and you watch the snow gather gently in their hollows. A crow flutters above, its wings slicing through the air like a black ribbon being pulled through water, and you pause to watch it land on a post ahead. It stares back at you for a moment, then calls out once, sharp and brief. Before flying on, the fields that stretch out on either side of the road are hushed beneath the snow. The fences lean, the ditches are hidden, and the shapes of the land blur together under the softness of winter's hand. You remember how different these same fields looked in the summer green and busy with life, full of insects and waving grasses, but now, everything waits, dormant, patient. You wonder if the land dreams, like people do, if somewhere beneath the frost and earth, something stirs in silence, waiting to wake. A figure appears in the distance. A neighbor, perhaps, wrapped in wool and trudging toward the woods with a basket slung over their shoulder. You raise your hand in a silent greeting, and they return it. No words are needed, just the shared rhythm of breath, of frost, of footsteps pressing into snow. You reach the old well that marks the halfway point between your cottage and the village square. The stone rim is dusted white, and the rope creaks faintly as you test its weight. The bucket comes up slow, coated in ice around its edges, and the water inside is dark and cold and clear. You drink a little, cupping your hands against the cold, and it shocks your mouth with its sharp clarity, a taste of stone and sky, a reminder of how clean silence can be. As you move on, the road curves gently, bending toward the stream where the bridge stands. The water beneath is frozen, still and perfect, and the bridge creaks faintly under your weight. You pause at the center, hands on the wooden rail, looking down through the ice. Beneath the glassy surface, shapes lie: hidden rocks, twigs, a forgotten boot, the past preserved by winter, waiting in stillness. You touch the ice with your fingertips and feel nothing, just the barrier, just the cold. Ahead, the village comes into view again. The small chapel with its crooked bell tower, the blacksmith's forge with its chimney like a watchful eye, the market square where no stalls stand today. You walk slower now, your feet beginning to ache, but your mind is quiet. The world has folded in on itself, wrapped in white and hush, and you feel, for a rare moment, that you belong to something older and slower than your thoughts. A dog barks in the distance, a door creaks. Somewhere, someone chops wood. Life continues, though it moves like honey in the cold thick, slow, inevitable. You reach the edge of the square and pause again, not because you are unsure, but because stopping feels right. You look around at the snow-covered shapes of lives being lived beside your own, and for a moment, you feel very small, but not alone. You breathe out slowly, watching the cloud drift from your lips. You close your eyes, and you listen to the snow, to the wind, to the quiet, to your own pulse, steady beneath layers of wool and winter. And then, when you are ready, you turn and you walk once more, back down the road, toward home. By the time you return, dusk is already gathering at the edges of the sky. The path behind you is barely visible now, your footprints softened by fresh snowfall, and the wind has shifted again, stronger, sharper, as if the night has teeth. Your hands are numb, your shoulders heavy, and the wood bundled on your back creaks faintly with every step. But your thoughts are no longer on the cold. They're ahead of you, inside that small, crooked cottage, where firelight flickers against rough stone walls, and the scent of smoke curls beneath the rafters like an old lullaby. As the door creaks open, warmth greets you not much, but enough to sting your face where the frost had settled. The room is dim and close, the fire a low orange hum in the hearth. Your family stirs as you enter, and for a moment, no one speaks. They simply look, then nod, and you nod in return. You unload the wood gently, stacking each piece beside the fire, and the sound of it, wood on wood, is the first true noise you've heard all day. Someone hands you a cup. Inside, the liquid is thin and hot and tastes of bitter herbs and ash. You drink it slowly, grateful for the way it warms your chest as it goes down. Steam rises from the surface, catching the firelight like breath in the cold, and you let yourself sit. Just for a moment, knees close to the flame, fingers stretched out to meet it. The ache begins to ease. There's a rhythm to this part of the evening, one you know by heart. Boots come off, hung to dry, mittens wrung out and draped on a line near the hearth. The children curl closer to the warmth, rubbing their hands, their cheeks flushed from the cold. You take your place among them, and for a while, no one says much at all. The fire speaks for everyone, crackling low and steady, like an old story told without words. Above you, the ceiling groans softly with the shifting of the roof. Outside, the snow taps lightly on the shuttered window, the wind whispering through every gap in the walls. You listen to it without fear. These are familiar sounds. This is the voice of winter in its quietest form. A pot is placed on the coals, its contents meager but hot. Turnips, cabbage, maybe a scrap of meat if you're lucky. The smell rises slowly, earthy and simple, and the children sit up straighter. Their eyes follow every motion, every wooden spoon and iron ladle. You remember that hunger from your own youth, not just the ache in the belly, but the waiting, the hoping, the way a thin broth could taste like a feast when your body was cold enough, when the food is finally ready. Bowls are passed hand to hand. The fire glows brighter now, as if encouraged by the closeness of bodies, the hush of anticipation. You eat slowly, letting the warmth spread from the inside out, letting the moment stretch. This meal may not be much, but it is enough. And in the cold months, enough is everything. Later, when the bowls are clean and the flames burn lower, someone begins to speak, not a story, exactly, just memories, names of those long gone, tales of winters past, of storms that lasted weeks and fires that burned all the way to spring. The children listen with wide eyes. You add your own voice when needed, filling in the gaps, smoothing over the rough edges. It's not entertainment, it's remembering, a kind of thread that ties each generation to the next. The fire dims, the youngest is already asleep, curled near your side, their breath soft and slow. You wrap a worn woolen blanket around their shoulders, careful not to wake them. Your body aches in quiet ways now, not from labor, but from weight, the weight of another day survived, of another winter pressing in, of hope held gently in your chest like a coal you must keep alive. You shift your gaze to the flame, it dances still. Even now, even with so little fuel, a small, defiant light in the deep belly of the cold. You think of the road outside, buried once more in snow. You think of the distant fields, the silent trees, the long breath of winter. And you think of tomorrow and the day after, and how you will rise again, gather wood again, return to the hearth again, until spring loosens the land's grip and gives back its color. But not yet, tonight. There is only this, firelight on stone, the quiet breathing of those you love, the soft ache of being alive, and the snow falling still, just beyond the door. The cottage breathes with you now. Each embers crackle a heartbeat. Each soft inhale from the sleeping bodies around you, another thread in the woven quiet of this night. You lie there with your eyes half open, not yet asleep, but no longer quite awake. Your thoughts drifting like the flakes of snow that still tap faintly at the wooden shutters. The world is hushed, blanketed, and deep, and beyond these worn stone walls, the land has turned to ice, somewhere outside. The wind has changed again. You can hear it singing past the chimney stones, curling low across the thatch, a voice ancient and wide and strange. It carries scents you recognize as smoke, pine, the faint salt of the frozen stream, and others harder to name, the kind that make you feel watched, remembered, as if the land itself is stirring in its sleep. You rise, careful not to wake anyone, and step toward the door. The floor beneath your feet is cold as river stone. The latch clicks quietly, and you ease it open just a little, just enough to peer outside. The night meets you like an old friend, not harsh, not cruel, just vast and alive in its stillness. The snow glows under the starlight, every flake catching silver where it falls. Trees bow beneath their burden. The fields stretch far and silent, broken only by the dim outline of distant barns or the flicker of a candle in a neighbor's window. Miles away, your breath clouds in front of you. You listen, not for danger, but for the presence of the world, and it is here, in the hush, in the cold, in the quiet way everything waits. You think of the animals sleeping in the barn, their warmth shared beneath thick straw, of the plow rusting in the shed, its iron bones stiff with frost, of the seed sacks tied tight in the granary, protected against the teeth of winter. So much is sleeping, so much is being saved, and you are the keeper of the fire, the listener at the door, the one who wakes, not just from rest, but from memory. This is not your first winter, nor will it be your last. Each one is written differently into your bones, but the story remains the same. Endure, tend, wait. A soft sound behind you draws your gaze back inside. A child stirs and murmurs something in their sleep. You smile, gently, then close the door again. careful to seal out the wind but keep the stillness. The warmth of the hearth greets you once more, dim but living. You sit again near the coals, watching as they shift and fall inward, red, orange, gold, tiny sunrises. You press your hands near them, feeling their echo long after pulling away. Soon, you will sleep, wrapped in wool, your limbs heavy, your mind still tuned to the shape of the wind. But for now, you simply rest where you are, letting this moment hold you, letting the silence speak, because in winter, silence is never empty. It carries everything that waits to be born again. Morning comes slowly in winter, not with blazing light, but with a gradual thinning of the night. The darkness softens just enough to reveal the edges of the world, again, the outline of the hearth, the curve of the wooden beams above you, the pale breath rising from the lips of those still sleeping nearby. You shift beneath the woolen layers, your muscles sore from cold, but there is no luxury of lying still for long. The fire needs feeding, the animals need tending. Hunger waits at the door. You rise carefully, wrapping a thick cloak around your shoulders. The coals in the hearth have nearly gone dark, but a few faint embers remain. You coax them gently back to life with kindling, then with splinters, then with a broken branch. Smoke curls upward like a silent offering, and soon, there is light again, dim, flickering, warm. There's little food to begin the day. The root cellar offers only what hasn't spoiled a turnip soft with age, a handful of onions with papery skins, a crust of dark bread, chipped from a larger loaf. Tastes more of memory than of grain, but it is something. And in winter, something is everything. The others begin to stir, faces drawn, movements slow. Children reach for warmth, not words. Their eyes look older in this season, filled with a patience beyond their years. You pass them small bowls of hot water, with a pinch of herbs more warmth than nourishment. Still, they sip carefully, hands cupped close to their chins, and say nothing. There is a kind of reverence in their silence. Outside, the snow still falls, thin flakes now, gentle and slow, as if the sky itself is too tired to be fierce. You open the door with both hands and step out into the morning, your boots crunching through the drifted white. The world is utterly still. No bird calls, no running water, just the soft sound of falling snow on frozen thatch and the occasional creak of your cottage settling. The animals greet you with faint noises. A cow shifts its weight and breathes steam into the air. A goat blinks slowly, its body curled tightly against the cold. You check their straw, their water, their thin store of feed. Everything is measured now, nothing wasted. Each flake of hay, each handful of oats, carries the weight of survival. When the work is done, you return inside and gather the family for a morning prayer. It is not long or spoken loud, just a few words, some old, some new, a murmur of gratitude for breath, for warmth, for another day. No one bows their head dramatically, but they listen, and that is enough. Later, you take a small candle to the window, setting it on the ledge as a sign not to the outside world, but to yourself, a signal that even in the deep heart of winter, light exists. However fragile, however faint, it flickers as the wind brushes the walls again. The flame sways but does not fall, and neither do you. You sit quietly with your hands in your lap, the taste of the bitter morning still lingering on your tongue, and for a moment, you allow yourself the smallest thought of spring. Not hope, not longing, just awareness that someday the thaw will come. And when it does, you'll remember how deeply the frost once held you. But for now, you stay here, in this moment, in this stillness, in this snow-covered hour between breath and endurance. There are no grand festivals in this season, no trumpets or banners waving in the air. But even in the deepest months of winter, people find each other, one by one, wrapped in cloaks and scarves. Neighbors trudge through the snow-packed lanes to gather in the stone chapel at the village edge, not because of command or custom, but because solitude grows too heavy in long, cold days, and silence begins to echo in strange ways. You walk there slowly, your boots leaving neat indentations in the soft snow, your breath rising in thick plumes. All around you, smoke curls from chimneys, marking signs of life like signals against the pale sky. The chapel stands low and solid, its wooden door weathered, its thatched roof already sagging beneath the weight of the snow. But within its walls, the warmth of bodies and the murmur of voices create a space unlike any other. Inside, the air is dim but golden. Beeswax candles flicker in their iron holders, casting soft shadows on the faces gathered close together. No pews, just benches, no choir, just the occasional hum of a tune remembered from childhood. And in that stillness, someone speaks not from a pulpit, but from the center of the room, hands open and rough with frostbite. Their words are not grand or poetic. They are plain and slow, shaped by the season. They speak of shared burdens, of missing livestock, of frozen wells, of bread that must be stretched to last another week. But they also speak of the lamb born too early that somehow lived, of the stranger who shared his only loaf, of the old woman who still knits socks for the village children. It is not joy exactly, but it is not despair either. It is something older, wiser, quieter. You sit still, listening, your hands warming slowly between your knees. The chapel smells of wool and ash and melting snow. Someone passes you a small cup of spiced cider, weak but warm, and you sip it with reverence. The heat travels through your chest like sunlight might. If only the clouds would lift. Afterward, when the words have finished and the candles have burned low, the people linger, no one rushes home. They share bits of food-cracked walnuts, dried apples, a sliver of cheese wrapped in linen. They speak softly in corners. They mend mittens. They hold each other's children for a few hours. It is as if the cold has lost its grip, replaced by the shared rhythm of breath and voice and presence. And then slowly, gently, they depart. Not all at once. Some stay behind to sweep the stone floor or tend the fading coals. You wait too, not ready yet to return to the smallness of your own walls. The chapel, though humble, holds something the wind cannot reach. A memory of warmth, a whisper of togetherness. Outside, night begins to fall again. The snow has stopped for now, but the wind is rising, tugging at cloaks and hoods as people make their way back through the deepening dusk. You step into the cold once more, but it feels different now. Not easier, just shared. And that, somehow, is enough. Back in your cottage, the fire is low, but your hands know what to do. You stoke it with quiet care, watching as the flames rise and settle again. The children are already asleep, curled together like kittens beneath the furs. You lower yourself beside them, pulling the blanket high, listening to the hush outside, branches creaking, snow ticking gently against the shutters. Winter will not end tonight. There are weeks still to endure, but something has shifted, not outside, where the frost still clings to every surface, but within, in you, in the space where hope once lived quietly and now lives just a little louder. And as your eyes begin to close, not in exhaustion, but in slow release, you hold one final thought close, that in the deepest cold, it is not firewood or furs that keep the soul alive. It is each other. Morning comes slowly in winter. The sky remains dark long after you've stirred beneath the weight of wool and hay, and when at last it begins to lighten. It's with a pale, reluctant glow that barely touches the frost. Your breath clouds the air before you even move, your joints stiff and your fingers hesitant, but still you rise, because that is what you do. There is no luxury of delay. The sun does not wait for warmth, nor does hunger. The floor is cold beneath your feet. The fire has long since faded to embers, and your first task is always the same: stoke the hearth. The wood you stacked yesterday is already damp with the breath of the snow, but you coax a flame anyway, gently blowing life back into the cinders. A thin ribbon of smoke rises as the first orange sparks flare. You wait for the crackle, you wait for the heat, you wait, even if it never fully comes. Outside, the path that leads from your door is frozen solid. It winds its way through brittle underbrush and low stone walls, past the silent cottages of neighbors still wrapped in slumber. The snow crunches loudly beneath your steps. Each footfall feels heavier than the last. But this is the path you take every day, toward the woods, toward the distant ridge where firewood still grows. If you are willing to dig and chop and carry, you wrap your cloak tighter, drawing the hood low over your brow. The wind is not harsh today, but it bites all the same. You pass the chapel where the candles still sit in their iron holders, the wax melted and pooled from the night before. You see smoke curling from one chimney, and another with nothing but icicles. You think of the old man who lives there alone. You make a note to bring him some wood later. At the edge of the forest, everything is quiet. The trees stand tall and still, their branches sagging under the weight of snow, their shadows long even in the early light. There are no birds, no squirrels, just the occasional creak of ice shifting, as though the woods themselves are sighing in their sleep. You lift your axe with careful hands, not with violence, but with rhythm. Each swing deliberate, each strike an act of stubborn hope. The hours pass slowly, marked not by time, but by the weight of what you carry, one bundle at a time. You tie them with rope, you heave them over your shoulder, you begin the walk back home. And though your breath burns and your legs ache, you do not curse the cold. You've stopped doing that long ago. Now, you simply accept it, the way one accepts the shape of the land or the sound of their own voice. By the time you return, the sky has shifted again. The pale blue has faded into slate gray, the kind that warns of another storm. But the cottage is still standing. The fire is alive again, and inside. Your family waits not with fanfare or ceremony, but with a quiet nod, with the gentle pressing of a hand against your arm. The wood is stacked by the hearth, the pot simmers. Thin stew perhaps, but warm. You sit beside it, letting the heat draw the cold from your bones. Evening comes with the same hush it always does, and you let yourself settle into the stillness. You listen to the faint howling of the wind through the trees, the soft breathing of those you love nearby. You think of the path tomorrow, and the day after that, and how it never really ends. But there's no dread in it, just the knowledge that life continues, one slow footstep at a time. And when you close your eyes, there is no triumph in your heart, no pride, no dramatic story waiting to be told, just a quiet resolve, steady as the snow falling outside your window. This too is history. This too is survival. The snow never truly stops. It only rests when it does. The world turns muffled and white, and for a moment the village feels as though it floats above time itself. But the rhythm of life does not wait for the snow to melt. And so, once a fortnight, when the skies grant a pause and the roads are not buried too deep, the winter market returns to the clearing just past the chapel walls. You awaken earlier than usual. The fire is coaxed to life in the dark. The stew is ladled cold into a flask, and the bundles of kindling you've collected over the week are tied and ready by the door. These are your currency bundles of dried wood, precious in the frost-bitten months, each one carefully measured by your eye, by weight and crackle and burn. You have no coin, but wood, in winter, can buy what coin sometimes cannot. Your cloak is dusted with frost before you even reach the first bend in the road. The sun has not yet risen, and the village path is still marked only by the footprints of others like you, traders and neighbors wrapped in wool, carrying baskets, sacks, sleds, a slow procession, moving through silence, not joyous, not grim, simply necessary. When the market appears ahead, it is not grand, no stalls, no bright canvas, just a scattering of shapes against the snow people gathered in a ring, some kneeling beside their goods, others warming their hands over iron braziers. The heat is faint, but it draws you in. You find your place and set down your wood, brushing snow from the rope bindings, your breath rising in puffs as you look around. There is the baker's wife, selling stale loaves hardened by the cold, traded for fire-starting bundles or a slab of frozen lard. A man with a tin of dried beans from last season's stock. A boy offering tallow candles, still soft enough to shape if kept close to the body. Someone else wrapped so tightly you can't tell if they are man or woman, pours weak ale from a skin, bartering not by the sip, but by the warmth it provides. You do not speak much, no one does. Words waste breath, and every breath is a bit of heat that must be hoarded. But glances, nods, the tightening of gloved hands, these are the language of the winter market. You offer 3 bundles and receive in return a heel of cheese, hard and salted, enough to last a week if you're careful. Another bundle earns you a strip of smoked fish, the final one, after a long negotiation. is exchanged for a handful of blackened onions wrapped in cloth. Not luxury, but survival. You stay near the brazier for a time, savoring the heat. Around you, the market continues, quiet as a chapel, the only sound the creak of boots in the snow and the occasional murmur of gratitude, or refusal, or apology. A young girl cries once, softly, and is quickly hushed. Even sorrow feels fragile in this cold. You linger until the sky begins to shift. The gray deepens. The wind picks up again. One by one, the shapes around you begin to vanish down the road. No one lingers long in winter. You pull your cloak tighter, cradle your small bundle of food in your arms, and begin the walk home, boots crunching in rhythm with your breath. By the time you reach the village, the snow has returned, light but steady. It dusts your hood, clings to your lashes, and turns the world pale again. You pass the chapel, the same melted wax frozen once more along its stones. You pass the man with the chimneyless cottage. You pause, you split your smallest bundle of fish, wrap it in cloth, and leave it by his door, back home. Your family gathers close as you show them what you've brought. The cheese is passed around like treasure. The fish is placed gently near the fire to soften. The onions, sharp and unfamiliar, are held up to the light like artifacts from another world. No feast, and yet, in this season, it feels like one. That night, you sleep with the market still echoing in your mind, not the noise of it, but its quiet, its calm, the cold certainty of need, met only by the humble offerings of others like you, bound not by wealth, but by the unspoken understanding that in times like these, everything is earned by breath, by frost, by effort, and everything given is a kindness remembered. The snow continues to fall, but for now, the cupboard is not empty, and the fire still burns. There is a hush that only winter knows. It isn't the quiet of stillness, nor the peace of solitude, but something older and ancient, slow-breathing silence that settles over the world like a second layer of snow. And when you step into the forest on a morning like this, it feels as though you've passed through a veil into a place where even time forgets to move. The trees stand motionless, tall spires of frost-bitten bark, their limbs laced with brittle ice. Not a bird stirs, not a fox pads through the brush. Even the wind, that constant companion of winter, seems to have found reason to pause. Every sound you make, the crunch of your foot against the hard-packed snow, the exhale rising like smoke feels louder than it should, as though it doesn't belong here, as though the forest itself is listening. You are here to gather, not firewood, not today, something rarer. The villagers call it frost moss delicate, pale green strands that curl beneath old stones and tree roots, immune to cold, fragrant when dried, used in winter poultices and salves, and once, you heard, in the oil rubbed into the limbs of old knights who still dreamed of war. It grows only in places the sun barely touches, and only in the coldest seasons. You come alone, you always come alone. You pull your cloak tighter as you walk. The cold clings, not like wind but like breath, pressing gently through the cloth until it settles in your bones. The silence is so complete it becomes a sound in itself, a deep, low hum that feels like it vibrates through your boots. A raven watches you from a high bough, its feathers ruffled but unmoving. You do not meet its eye. The grove appears slowly, as if the forest is reluctant to give it up. Just a dip in the land, half shadowed by leaning oaks and the bones of an old stone wall, half swallowed by snowdrift. You kneel carefully, not quickly. The frost moss hides under thin plates of ice, and if you shatter them too hard, you ruin the growth beneath. You pull off your gloves and reach down, bare fingers brushing frozen earth. It stings, then burns, then goes numb. But you keep gathering. Time fades in places like this. You do not count the minutes. You move from patch to patch, cupping the moss in both hands, placing it into a small cloth pouch hung from your belt. The sound of your breath and the shifting ice become your world. You pause once to stretch your aching legs, and that's when you see it. A hoof print, fresh, large, deer, no, larger than any deer that walks near the village. A stag, perhaps, but one you've never seen. You crouch to examine it, and something in your stomach twists. It's not fear, not quite, but you feel it again, the hush, deeper now, like the forest is holding its breath. And still you gather. You know the way back by heart, but somehow the return always feels longer. The trees look older on the way out. The trail you left has begun to vanish under new fallen snow. By the time the first crow caws from above, the sun has shifted low, washing the trunks with that faint gold that always comes too late. You move faster, boots skidding over frost-slick roots, and finally, the forest parts. The first sound you hear beyond the trees is the distant bark of a dog, far off in the village. You exhale when you return home. The others glance at the pouch before greeting you. They know its worth. You unwrap the moss with quiet hands, letting them touch it gently. Smell the sharp green scent. The reminder of life thriving even in bitterest cold. That evening, some is ground into oil for the joints of an elder, some set aside for trade, and some just a little tucked into your own pillow. Its scent sharp and strange, like distant spring. As night falls, you sit by the fire with the weight of the forest still in your limbs, and though the room fills slowly with warmth, there is something in you that remains cold but not unpleasantly so. A silence carried in, a stillness borrowed. Outside, the wind returns, whistling through the chimney, but inside, the hush of the frozen forest lingers, and for once, it feels like peace. The sun has set now, and the world outside has vanished into shades of silver and blue. Wind curls at the corners of the house like an old memory, whispering through the wooden boards, trying to find a way in. But the fire holds strong, its glow painting everything it touches in flickering amber. You sit closest to it, legs crossed, a woolen blanket wrapped around your shoulders, not just for warmth, though the warmth is welcomes, but for comfort, for presence, for safety. Because in a medieval winter, the fire was more than heat. It was life. It crackles and shifts, dancing low in the hearth, and for a moment you find yourself watching the flames instead of thinking. They curl like ribbons, rising and folding back upon themselves in a slow, quiet rhythm, as if the fire is breathing too. Around you, the small room is quiet. The others have gone to bed. You can hear the deep, steady breaths of children sleeping just behind the curtain, their dreams untouched by hunger for tonight. The dog sighs once at your feet. You smile, a rare thing. These days, the fire took effort, gathering kindling from a frozen forest, hauling wood down steep, icy paths, stacking it neatly, keeping it dry, not too much, not too little. Fire management is not a skill born of comfort, but of desperation. And still, there's something sacred about it. You remember an elder saying once that to tend a flame was like tending a soul. You didn't understand it then. Now you do. You feed it one stick at a time. Let it burn slow. Let the night stretch. Let the heat last. And as you sit there, toes tingling with a familiar prickling warmth and eyes soft with sleep not yet taken, you start to think about the people who sat like this before you. Generations of them. Faces you never knew. Names long forgotten. But hands like yours. Cold like yours. Grateful, just like you, for this simple blaze. You picture a stone hall, centuries ago, a nobleman in velvet robes seated before a grand hearth, sipping spiced wine while snow drifts in the corners of the room. His fire roars, fed by servants, shielded by carved iron. His warmth is taken for granted, his luxury surrounded by shadows who will never feel it the same way. And yet, he stares into it. Too, the same flickering dance, the same quiet trance. Fire doesn't care who you are. It burns just the same for king or commoner, soldier or monk. It is the most ancient companion, a gift wrestled from gods, guarded by myth, carried in embers across time. Without it, winter is death. With it, winter is a story waiting to be told. You lean forward and stir the coals with a stick. Sparks fly up like tiny stars, bright and brief, and for a moment, you remember how rare it is that something so beautiful is also so necessary. Tomorrow will come with frost on the windows and aching joints and more chores than you care to name. But tonight, you are warm. Tonight, the cold stays outside. Tonight, your breath does not mist in the air. And that means you've made it at least one more day, one more night. You close your eyes, not quite sleeping, but not quite awake either. A space between. The flames whisper still, They say nothing in particular, but you listen anyway, and slowly, deeply. You feel the breath of the house shift to match yours, calm, even alive. It's strange how the quiet moments last the longest, how warmth leaves its memory in the bones, and how, when you think back on winters past, what you remember is not the hunger, or the snow, or even the pain, but the fire, always the fire. So if you ever wonder what truly mattered in the long nights of medieval time, it wasn't gold, or glory, or great deeds carved in stone. It was the heat of a hearth, the hum of breathing nearby, and the soft, stubborn glow of light refusing to die in the dark. If this story lit a small fire in your imagination tonight, then it's done what it was meant to do. And if you find yourself curled under your own blankets now, with just a bit more appreciation for the quiet and the warmth, then we've met across time in the best way. Thank you for listening. Sleep well, and may your hearth always burn bright.